The small metal cage shook violently as something inside threw itself against the bars. Dr. Emma Walsh watched the security feed from her lab bench, studying the creature that had already killed 2 collection drones and injured 3 crew members during transport. The young Ravenclaw predator was no bigger than her childhood pet cat, but its metallic scales gleamed like armor and its claws could cut through steel. "Specimen is secured in Lab Section C," announced the ship's AI in its calm, mechanical voice. "Warning, subject displays extreme aggression levels. Recommend remote observation only." Emma sighed and saved her research notes. The Meridian had been orbiting the Tau Ceti world for 3 months now, trying to understand the planet's dominant species. Every other galactic race that had attempted contact with the Ravenclaw had failed. The insectoid hive nations lost an entire fleet. The crystal beings of Andromeda couldn't even get close to the planet's surface. The reptilian empire declared the world forbidden after losing dozens of their best warriors, but humans were different. They had to be. The door, too. The lab hissed open and Zack scuttled inside on 6 legs, her compound eyes reflecting the harsh laboratory lights. The Hive Queen's translator device clicked and buzzed as she spoke. "The specimen refuses all food offerings. It will die within 2 solar cycles if this continues." Emma looked at the security feed again. The young Ravenclaw had stopped throwing, itself against the cage, and now crouched in the far corner, its scales shifting from angry red to a dull gray. Even through the metal barriers and security cameras, she could see the fear in its large, intelligent eyes. "What did the collection team report about the capture site?" Emma asked, pulling up the mission files on her tablet. Zack's antennae twitched with what Emma had learned to recognize as uncertainty. Adult Ravenclaw were protective. The collection required significant force. The specimen was found hiding beneath the body of what appeared to be its parent. Emma felt her stomach twist. She looked at the young creature again, seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't a monster. This was a scared orphaned child. The Military Advisory Board expects preliminary results within 7 cycles, Zack continued. They wish to understand Ravenclaw combat capabilities for the war effort against the Void Collective. The war. Everything came back to the war these days. The Void Collective had been sweeping across the Outer Rim systems, consuming entire worlds, and leaving nothing behind. The Galactic Alliance needed every advantage they could find, and the Ravenclaw species had shown incredible fighting abilities. If they could be understood, perhaps controlled, they might turn the tide of the conflict. But Emma wasn't thinking about the war as she watched the small creature in its cage. She was thinking about her neighbor's dog back on Earth, how it had cowered in the corner of the animal shelter until someone showed it kindness. She was thinking about the baby bird she had rescued as a child, how it had hissed and tried to bite her until she proved she meant no harm. "I want to try a direct approach," Emma said quietly. Zack's entire body went rigid. "Direct approach? Dr. Walsh, the safety protocols clearly state..." "The safety protocols were written by military advisors who see everything as a potential weapon," Emma interrupted. "But what if they're wrong? What if the Ravenclaw aren't naturally aggressive? What if they're just scared?" The Hive Queen's translator device made a sound Emma had never heard before, something between a screech and a mechanical failure. "Dr. Walsh, your species has many admirable qualities, but your tendency toward emotional decision-making could be fatal in this situation. The specimen has already demonstrated its capacity for violence." Emma saved her work and stood up, checking the small translator device on her belt. The universal communicators weren't perfect, but they could convey basic concepts and emotions across species barriers. She had used them successfully with dozens of alien life forms during her career. "Zack, in all your species' recorded history, how many times have the Hive Nation successfully domesticated a predator species?" The alien's compound eyes shifted in what Emma recognized as thought. "None. The Hive does not domesticate. We consume or we avoid. Humans have domesticated wolves, bears, great cats, raptors, and dozens of other predator species on our world. We didn't do it through force or fear. We did it through understanding and trust. Emma walked to the laboratory's supply cabinet and pulled out a small nutrition bar designed for carnivorous species. The collection team had reported that the Ravenclaw seemed to prefer fresh protein, but they had only offered the standard military rations. "Dr. Walsh," Zach's voice carried a warning tone that cut through the translator's mechanical rendering. "If you enter that containment area and the specimen kills you, I will be required to eliminate it to prevent escape. This will end our research." "Entirely." Emma paused at the laboratory door that led to the containment section. Through the reinforced window, she could see the small cage and the creature inside. The young Ravenclaw had pressed itself so far into the corner that its metallic scales were scraping against the wall, leaving tiny silver scratches on the metal. "Then don't let it kill me," Emma said, and pressed her palm against the door scanner. The containment section was smaller than she had expected, just a white room with the reinforced cage in the center. The young Ravenclaw looked even smaller in person, barely the size of a house cat, but with the lean, muscular build of a natural hunter. Its scales were a beautiful silver-blue color now, no longer the angry red from the security feeds. Emma sat down on the floor about 3 meters from the cage, cross-legged like she used to do when reading to children at the local library back home. The movement made the creature's head snap up, its large eyes focusing on her with laser intensity. "Hello there," Emma said softly, activating her translator device. "I know you're scared. I know this place is strange and cold and nothing smells right." The Ravenclaw's scales shifted slightly, taking on hints of gold around the edges. Its translator device, a more advanced model attached to the cage, crackled to life with alien sounds that almost resembled speech. Emma unwrapped the nutrition bar and broke off a small piece, then slid it through the feeding slot in the cage. Instead of the aggressive snarling she expected, the young creature simply looked at the food, then back at her, then at the food again. "It's okay," Emma whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you. Nobody should have to be alone when they're scared." Through the laboratory's security system, she could hear Zach reporting to the ship's command crew that the human scientist had made contact with the specimen and was still alive. Other voices joined the communication channel, including Captain Torres and the military advisors who had ordered this research. But Emma wasn't listening to them. She was watching the small creature slowly approach the food she had offered, its scales now showing flecks of warm amber. When it finally took the nutrition bar in its small, surprisingly delicate claws, Emma smiled. For the first time since its capture, the young Ravenclaw made a sound that wasn't a hiss or a snarl. It was soft, almost musical, like a question spoken, in a language Emma didn't know but somehow understood. "My name is Emma," she said, placing her hand flat against the cage. "What's yours?" 3 days of patient visits had changed everything. The young Ravenclaw no longer cowered when Emma entered the containment room. Instead, it would move to the front of its cage, scales shifting to warm colors, as it made soft chirping sounds through the translator device. Emma had started calling it Nova, after the way its scales seemed to sparkle like distant stars. "The behavioral changes are remarkable," Emma recorded into her personal log as she prepared for another session. "Nova shows clear signs of recognition, anticipation, and what appears to be emotional bonding. This contradicts every previous study of Ravenclaw behavior." The corridor outside the laboratory buzzed with activity as other crew members went about their duties. Word had spread quickly through the ship about the human scientist who could calm the deadly predator with just her voice. Some called it impossible. Others whispered that humans had some kind of supernatural power over dangerous creatures. Emma knew better. There was nothing supernatural about kindness. She entered the containment room carrying a small cushion from her quarters and a thermos of hot chocolate. The familiar ritual had developed over the past few days. She would sit on the floor, Nova would move to the front of its cage, and they would spend hours in quiet companionship while Emma worked on her reports. "Good morning, Nova," Emma said, settling onto the cushion. The young Ravenclaw's scales immediately brightened, cycling through shades of gold and amber that Emma had learned meant happiness or excitement. The translator device crackled, and through the mechanical rendering, Emma heard something that made her breath catch. The sounds coming from Nova were different today, more structured, almost like the creature was trying to mimic her speech patterns. Ma, Nova's translator produced, the mechanical voice struggling with the unfamiliar sounds. Emma nearly dropped her thermos. In all the galactic databases, there was no record of a Ravenclaw attempting to communicate in another species' language. They were supposed to be intelligent, but purely aggressive, incapable of social bonding outside their own kind. "Yes," Emma whispered, placing her hand against the cage where Nova had pressed its small paw. "I'm Emma." The young creature made more sounds, and the translator worked frantically to process them. "Emma. Friend. Warm. Safe." Tears began forming in Emma's eyes. Nova wasn't just learning her name. It was learning concepts, emotions, complex ideas that military reports claimed were beyond Ravenclaw comprehension. "Nova, friend," Emma replied, using the simple structure the creature seemed to prefer. "Nova warm, Nova safe." The young Ravenclaw's entire body seemed to vibrate with pleasure, its scales now displaying patterns Emma had never seen before. Swirls of deep blue mixed with bright silver, creating designs that looked almost like writing across its metallic hide. Emma activated her recording device and began documenting the color patterns. If Nova was trying to communicate through its scale colors as well as vocalizations, this could revolutionize their understanding of Ravenclaw culture. A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to the laboratory section. Emma glanced at her tablet and saw Captain Torres waiting outside with two other crew members she didn't recognize. "Come in," Emma called, not moving from her position near the cage. Captain Torres entered with his usual measured stride, followed by a tall crystal being that Emma identified as one of the ship's senior analysts, and a third figure she had never seen before, another human wearing the dark uniform of a military specialist. "Dr. Walsh," Captain Torres began, his Centaurian accent making her name sound formal and distant. "I'd like you to meet Commander Blake from the Terran Defense Force. He's here to observe your work with the specimen." Emma looked up at Commander Blake, noting the way his eyes immediately focused on Nova with the calculating gaze of someone evaluating a weapon. "Commander." "Dr. Walsh, your reports have generated significant interest at command," Blake said, pulling out a tablet of his own. "The possibility of establishing communication with a Ravenclaw specimen could provide crucial intelligence about their species' capabilities and weaknesses." Nova's scales had immediately shifted to darker colors when the strangers entered, and the young creature had pressed itself against the back of its cage. Emma could see the fear returning to its large eyes. "Nova isn't a specimen," Emma said quietly, not taking her eyes off the frightened creature. "Nova is a child who lost its family and needs care and protection." Commander Blake's expression hardened. "Dr. Walsh, that child belongs to a species that has killed thousands of sentient beings across the galaxy. The Ravenclaw are enemies of the Galactic Alliance. The Ravenclaw are protecting their territory from invasion," Emma replied, finally standing to face the commander. "Every contact attempt has involved armed ships and military personnel. How would humans react if alien fleets started orbiting Earth without invitation?" The crystal being, who had remained silent during the exchange, suddenly spoke through its harmonic translator. "The human raises an interesting point," All previous Ravenclaw encounters involved military vessels or resource extraction operations. Commander Blake ignored the comment and activated his own tablet, showing Emma a series of tactical displays. Dr. Walsh, the Void Collective is less than 6 months from Ravenclaw space. When they arrive, this entire world will be consumed unless we can establish defensive positions here. We need to understand these creatures' combat abilities so we can incorporate them into our battle plans. Emma looked at Nova, who had been following the conversation through its translator device. The young creature's scales were now deep purple shot through with black. Colors Emma had learned indicated stress and fear. "And what happens to Nova after you've gathered your intelligence?" Emma asked. "The specimen will be studied by military, xenobiologists who can extract maximum tactical information," Blake replied coldly. "This isn't a rescue operation, Doctor. This is a military necessity." Something inside Emma snapped. She walked to the cage control panel and began entering her authorization code. Warning lights started flashing as the containment system recognized her commands. "Dr. Walsh," Captain Torres called out in alarm. "What are you doing?" Emma looked back at Nova, who was watching her with those large, intelligent eyes. The young creature had been through enough. It had lost its family, been captured by aliens, and trapped in a cold metal cage. Now these people wanted to treat it like a laboratory animal for the rest of its life. "I'm making a choice," Emma said, and pressed the cage release button. The metal barriers slid open with a soft hiss. Nova hesitated for a moment, then slowly stepped out of the cage for the first time in days, the crystal being immediately backed toward the door, while Commander Blake reached for the weapon at his belt. "Nobody move," Emma said firmly, stepping between Nova and the others. "Nova, it's okay. These people won't hurt you." The young Ravenclaw looked around the room with wonder, its scales cycling through colors Emma had never seen before. Then it did something that made everyone freeze in shock. Nova walked directly to Emma and gently climbed into her lap, curling up against her warmth like a cat seeking comfort. Its scales settled into a pattern of soft gold and silver, and it began making a low rumbling sound that the translator couldn't process, but that Emma somehow knew meant contentment and trust. Commander Blake stared at the scene in disbelief. "That's impossible. Ravenclaw don't form bonds with other species." Emma ran her hand gently along Nova's metallic back, feeling the warmth beneath the scales. Maybe they just needed someone to try. Through the laboratory's communication system, word was already spreading throughout the ship. The human scientist hadn't just tamed a deadly predator. She had made a friend. 2 weeks had passed since Nova gained its freedom, and the young Ravenclaw had transformed the Meridian in ways no one expected. The creature followed Emma everywhere, its scales constantly shifting between happy golds and curious blues as it explored its new world. More importantly, Nova had begun learning at an incredible rate. Emma sat in her expanded laboratory, which now served as both research center and Nova's living space. The young Ravenclaw perched on a specially designed platform beside her desk, its claws carefully arranged around a tablet computer. Nova was learning to read Galactic standard text, picking up new words faster than most adult humans. "Nova understands engine sounds," the young creature said through its translator, the mechanical voice now carrying more natural speech patterns. "Big vibrations mean ship moves. Small vibrations mean ship stays." Emma looked up from her research notes, smiling at the observation. "That's right. You can feel the difference through the deck plating." Nova's scales brightened with pride. Over the past weeks, Emma had discovered that the Ravenclaw's metallic scales were far more than simple armor. They served as sensory organs, capable of detecting vibrations, electromagnetic fields, and even emotional states of nearby beings. Nova could literally feel when someone was afraid, angry, or happy. A soft knock at the laboratory door interrupted their lesson. Emma called. for entry, and Zack scuttled inside, her compound eyes reflecting more confusion than usual. "Dr. Walsh," the Hive Queen began, her translator clicking with agitation. "I must report unusual behaviors throughout the ship." What kind of unusual behaviors? Zack's antenna twitched rapidly. "Crew members are requesting to visit the laboratory. Not for research purposes, but simply to observe Nova. The crystal beings speak of harmonic resonance when the specimen vocalizes. Even our Centaurian security chief has asked permission to bring his younglings for a viewing." Emma glanced at Nova, who had been listening intently to the conversation. The young creature's scales were cycling through thoughtful purples and greens. "Nova is not dangerous to nice people," Nova said suddenly, causing Zack to step backward, in surprise. "Nova feels their emotions. Ship people are curious, not afraid. Curious is good emotion." Zack's entire body went rigid. "The specimen can sense emotions from other species?" "Nova can feel vibrations from living beings," Emma explained, standing to retrieve a datapad filled with her recent discoveries. "Heart rate, breathing patterns, muscle tension, it all creates distinct signatures that Ravenclaw scales can detect. Nova has been reading our emotional states since the day we met." The implications were staggering. If Ravenclaw could sense emotions across species barriers, their aggressive reputation might be completely misunderstood. They weren't attacking other beings out of malice. They were responding to the fear and hostility that previous contact teams had projected. "Request permission to conduct social experiment," Zack announced formally. "If the specimen can accurately assess emotional states, this information is crucial for understanding Ravenclaw behavioral patterns." Emma looked at Nova, who had climbed down from the platform and was now standing near Zack with obvious curiosity. "What do you think, Nova? Would you like to meet more of the crew?" Nova's scales shifted to bright gold streaked with silver. "Nova wants to meet ship friends. Nova will be careful with fragile ones." The next few hours transformed the laboratory into an impromptu meeting hall. Word had spread quickly through the ship, and crew members from every section requested brief visits. With Nova, Emma was amazed by what she witnessed. Quint, the ship's crystalline analyst, entered first with obvious nervousness. His harmonic translator produced anxious overtones that made everyone wince. But Nova simply approached slowly, scales shifting to calm blues and greens. "Quint friend is afraid," Nova observed, sitting down well out of reach. "Nova will stay, distant until Quint friend feels safe." Within minutes, Quint's harmonic patterns had shifted to curiosity rather than fear. The crystal being even extended one of his geometric appendages, allowing Nova to gently touch it with the tip of one claw. "Fascinating," Quint hummed through his translator. "The specimen's emotional resonance has a calming effect on my nervous system. This should not be possible across such different biological structures." More crew members followed. The reptilian engineers spoke with Nova about ship systems, discovering that the young creature could sense electrical patterns through the walls. The plant-based medical staff were delighted to find that Nova could detect their chemical communications, something no other species had ever managed. But the most remarkable moment came when Captain Torres brought his adolescent son to meet Nova. The young Centaurian was shy and stayed behind his father, but Nova immediately picked up on the youth's emotional state. "Small Torres friend is nervous but excited," Nova announced, scales displaying gentle yellow patterns. "Nova remembers being nervous around big people. Nova will be small friend too." The young Ravenclaw deliberately made itself smaller, crouching, down and folding its limbs to appear less threatening. Torres's son stepped forward hesitantly, then broke into a smile when Nova began making soft musical sounds that didn't need translation to convey friendship. "This changes everything," Captain Torres murmured to Emma as they watched the interspecies interaction. "If one young Ravenclaw can form bonds with our entire crew, what does this say about their species' social capabilities?" Emma pulled up her research files on the tablet, showing the captain weeks of behavioral observations. Every assumption we've made about the Ravenclaw might be wrong. They're not naturally aggressive, they're naturally empathetic. They respond to emotions more directly than any species we've encountered. Which means every previous contact attempt failed because we approached them with fear and weapons, Torres concluded. Exactly. We've been treating them as monsters when they might be the galaxy's most sensitive and social species. Commander Blake chose that moment to enter the laboratory, accompanied by two military scientists Emma didn't recognize. His presence immediately changed the atmosphere in the room. Nova's scales shifted to cautious oranges and reds as it detected the commander's hostile intentions. "Dr. Walsh," Blake announced, his voice cutting through the friendly conversations. "I have new orders from Galactic Command. The specimen is to be transferred to a military research facility for comprehensive study." The laboratory fell silent. Nova moved closer to Emma, its scales now displaying warning patterns of deep red and black. "Commander Blake brings fear and anger," Nova said through its translator, the mechanical voice somehow conveying distress. "Commander Blake thinks Nova is weapon. Nova is not weapon. Nova is person." Blake ignored Nova's words and activated a containment device, filling the air with an electromagnetic field designed to suppress alien technology. "The specimen will be sedated for transport within the hour." Emma stepped protectively in front of Nova. "Absolutely not. Nova isn't going anywhere." "Dr. Walsh, you're a civilian researcher attached to a military vessel," Blake replied coldly. "You don't have authority to refuse direct orders." But before Emma could respond, something unexpected happened. Every crew member in the laboratory moved to stand beside her, forming a protective circle around Nova. Zack's claws extended in a threat display. Quint's harmonic translator produced warning frequencies that made the metal walls vibrate. Even Captain Torres positioned himself between Blake and the young Ravenclaw. "Commander," Torres said formally, "I'm afraid your orders conflict with ship security protocols. This creature has been integrated into our crew structure and poses no threat to personnel." Blake's hand moved toward his weapon. "Captain Torres, I'm ordering you to stand down." Nova's scales had gone completely black. Now and Emma could feel the young creature trembling against her leg. But instead of cowering in fear, Nova did something that shocked everyone present. It began to sing. The sound that emerged from Nova's throat was unlike anything the translator could process. A pure, wordless melody that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull itself. Other crew members throughout the Meridian stopped their work to listen. The song spoke of loneliness and loss, of finding family among strangers, of the simple desire to be loved and accepted. When the song ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the laboratory. Even Commander Blake had lowered his weapon, though his expression remained hard. 3 days, Blake said finally. "You have 3 days to prepare comprehensive reports on your findings. After that, the specimen comes with me." He left without another word, followed by his scientists. The crew members gradually dispersed, but not before each one touched Nova gently or spoke words of encouragement. Emma knelt beside the young Ravenclaw, whose scales were slowly returning to normal colors. "I won't let them take you, Nova. We're family now." Nova climbed into her lap, purring with the sound of distant thunder. "Emma friend is Pack. Ship people are Pack. Nova fights to stay with Pack." Looking at the fierce determination in Nova's large eyes, Emma realized that Commander Blake had made a critical error. He still thought of Nova as a specimen to be studied, but Nova had learned to think of the Meridian as home and the crew as family. And if there was one thing the galaxy should have learned by now, it was never to threaten a Ravenclaw's family. The transport ship Hammer arrived exactly 3 days later, bristling with weapons and military personnel. Emma watched through the observation deck's massive windows as the dark vessel maneuvered alongside the Meridian, its hull scarred from battles against the Void Collective. Commander Blake had kept his word about the deadline. Nova pressed against Emma's side, scales displaying nervous patterns of silver and gray. The young Ravenclaw had grown noticeably in the past weeks. Now, reaching Emma's waist when standing upright. Its natural predator instincts were developing alongside its intelligence, but those instincts were focused on protection rather than aggression. "Big ship brings many frightened people," Nova observed, watching the docking procedure through the transparent aluminum. Their fear makes Nova's scales itch. Why do they fear Nova when Nova has not hurt anyone? Emma placed her hand gently on Nova's head, feeling the warmth beneath the metallic scales. Because they don't understand you yet. They only know the stories about Ravenclaw from the war reports. Stories can be wrong, Nova said, with the simple wisdom that had amazed everyone aboard the Meridian. Nova will show them better stories. The docking clamps engaged with a deep metallic thud that resonated through both ships. Within minutes, Emma could hear the heavy footsteps of military boots in the corridors outside. Commander Blake was wasting no time. Captain Torres appeared in the doorway of the observation deck, his expression grim. "Dr. Walsh, they're requesting immediate transfer of the specimen to their containment facilities." Emma stood up, Nova rising gracefully beside her. "And what did you tell them, Captain?" Torres's mouth curved into what might have been a smile on a human face. "I told them that our research subject is currently engaged in critical behavioral studies that require my authorization to interrupt." "Captain Torres is good pack leader," Nova commented approvingly. "Nova trusts Captain Torres to make wise decisions." The compliment seemed to strengthen Torres's resolve. "Nova, I need you to understand something. The people from that other ship are going to want to take you away from us. They think they can learn important things about your species by studying you in their laboratories." Nova's scales shifted to deeper colors, patterns of understanding mixed with determination. Nova knows. Nova has been preparing. Emma looked down at her young friend in surprise. "Preparing? For what?" Before Nova could answer, Commander Blake strode onto the observation deck with 6 armed soldiers flanking him. Each soldier carried weapons designed to subdue alien life forms, and their body language radiated the professional hostility of experienced warriors. "Dr. Walsh," Blake announced formally, "your research period has concluded. The specimen will now be transferred to proper military facilities for comprehensive analysis." Nova stepped forward, moving with a fluid grace that immediately put the soldiers on alert. But instead of displaying aggression, the young Ravenclaw did something unexpected. Its scales shifted to perfect mirror chrome, reflecting the soldiers' faces back at them like polished metal. "Nova greets the warrior pack," Nova said through its translator, the mechanical voice now carrying formal tones that Emma had never heard before. "Nova understands your fear. Nova wishes to speak of important things before going to new place." Blake gestured for his soldiers to remain ready. "The specimen's communication abilities have been noted in the reports. Proceed with containment, but..." Nova wasn't finished. "Commander Blake, your warriors carry weapons designed for Ravenclaw combat. Nova recognizes the energy patterns. Nova also recognizes the fear sent from your people." One of the soldiers raised his weapon, but Nova continued speaking without showing concern. "Nova's parent pack fought ships like yours. Nova watched parent pack die protecting Nova from scared warriors who came with weapons and cages." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Nova had never spoken about witnessing its parents' death before. The young creature had been carrying that trauma alone, yet had still chosen to trust the crew of the Meridian. "Your parent pack fought because they were protecting their territory," Blake replied, his voice softening slightly. "Our forces were responding to Ravenclaw attacks on civilian colonies." Nova's scales shifted to patterns Emma recognized as deep sadness mixed with something else. Knowledge. "Parent pack protected Nova and other younglings from the hungry dark. The Void Eaters, came to Nova's world first, before your warrior ships. Parent Pack fought the Void Eaters until they became desperate and angry. When more ships came, Parent Pack thought they were more Void Eaters. A chill ran down Emma's spine. Nova, are you saying the Ravenclaw were already fighting the Void Collective before we arrived? Nova's people have fought the Hungry Dark for many seasons. Nova's world was being eaten from the edges. Parent Pack and all Adult Pack became fierce fighters to protect the younglings and the remaining green places. Commander Blake lowered his weapon. That's impossible. Our intelligence shows that the Void Collective hasn't reached Ravenclaw space, yet. Nova's translator made a sound that might have been laughter if it came from a human throat. Commander Blake's intelligence is wrong. Nova's people have been fighting and dying while Galaxy people make plans and hold meetings. Nova came. With Emma people because Nova hopes to find help for Nova's world. The observation deck fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Emma looked at Nova with new understanding. The young creature hadn't just bonded with the crew of the Meridian out of loneliness or gratitude. Nova had been conducting its own diplomatic mission. "Show them," Nova said to Emma, its scales now displaying urgent orange patterns. "Show them Nova's memories." Emma pulled out her tablet and accessed the files Nova had helped her create over the past weeks. Using the young Ravenclaw's remarkable memory and the ship's computer systems, they had reconstructed detailed maps of Nova's homeworld and the surrounding space. Nova has been providing intelligence about the Void Collective's actual positions, Emma explained, projecting the holographic display for everyone to see. "They're not 6 months away from Ravenclaw space. They're already there." The tactical display showed a nightmare scenario. The Void Collective had approached Ravenclaw space from an unexpected vector, using a route that bypassed all of the Galactic Alliance's early warning systems. Nova's homeworld was surrounded, its people fighting a desperate battle for survival, while the rest of the galaxy remained unaware of the threat. "This changes our entire strategic position," Blake muttered, studying the projections. "If the Collective has advanced this far without detection, our outer rim defenses are completely compromised." Nova moved closer to the tactical display, its claws carefully manipulating the holographic controls. Nova shows true positions of Void Eater fleets. Nova remembers the sky patterns from before Parent Pack took Nova to safety caves. More markers appeared on the display, showing Void Collective forces in positions that threatened 3 major Galactic Alliance sectors. The young Ravenclaw had been carrying this crucial information in its memory, waiting for someone who might understand its importance. "Nova's people are skilled fighters," Nova continued, its voice carrying newfound authority through the translator. "But Nova's people cannot fight Void Eaters and Galaxy people at the same time. Nova came to find Alliance friends, not to become study specimen." Blake stared at the tactical display, his expression shifting from military authority to genuine concern. "You're proposing an alliance between the Galactic Defense Force and the Ravenclaw?" "Nova proposes that Galaxy people stop being afraid of Ravenclaw people," Nova replied simply. "Nova proposes that all people fight Hungry Dark together. Nova knows Ravenclaw fighting ways. Nova knows Void Eater weaknesses. Nova can teach Alliance friends, if Alliance friends trust Nova." Emma watched the transformation on Blake's face as he processed Nova's words. The commander was realizing that he hadn't come to collect a specimen for study. He had stumbled onto the galaxy's best chance for victory against the Void Collective. "Dr. Walsh," Blake said slowly, "I need you to prepare a detailed report on Nova's intelligence for immediate transmission to Galactic Command. And Nova..." He paused, seeming to struggle with addressing the young creature as an equal. "Nova, would you be willing to work with our military strategists as a consultant rather than a research subject?" Nova's scales exploded into brilliant patterns of gold and silver, brighter than Emma had ever seen them. "Nova will work with Alliance friends to save Nova's people and all people from Hungry Dark." The young Ravenclaw moved to stand between Emma and Blake, its posture proud and determined. But Nova stays with Emma Friend and Meridian Pack. They are Nova's chosen family now. Nova fights for family. Blake nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Agreed. Dr. Walsh, it appears your research has uncovered something far more valuable than combat data. Emma knelt beside Nova, overwhelmed by pride and affection for the remarkable creature who had grown from a frightened captive into a young diplomat. What did you find, Nova? Nova's translator couldn't quite process the complex harmonics in its response, but Emma understood anyway. In finding a way to trust each other across species barriers, they had found something the Void Collective couldn't consume or destroy. They had found hope. 6 months later, Emma stood on the surface of Nova's homeworld, watching something that would have been impossible to imagine when she first met the frightened young creature in its cage. Thousands of beings from dozens of different species worked together across the scarred landscape, rebuilding what the Void Collective had tried to destroy. Nova had grown during those months, now standing as tall as Emma's shoulder, with scales that had developed into intricate patterns unique to its individual identity. But despite its physical changes, Nova still chose to stay close to Emma whenever possible, their bond stronger than ever. The Crystal People finished the new water purification systems, Nova reported, approaching through the construction site with the easy confidence of someone completely comfortable in their own skin. And the Hive engineers say the atmospheric processors will be online before the next storm season. Emma smiled, watching Nova navigate between alien work crews with natural diplomacy. The young Ravenclaw had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a translator not just of languages, but of cultures and emotions across species barriers. Any word from the outer perimeter teams? Emma asked. Nova's scales shifted to satisfied blues and greens. Captain Torres reports all Void Collective scouts have been driven back past the system boundary. The Alliance fleet holds strong positions around all 3 inhabited worlds. The Alliance fleet. Emma still marveled at how quickly everything had changed once Nova shared its intelligence about the true scope of the Void Collective invasion. Within weeks of that meeting aboard the Meridian, the largest cooperative military effort in galactic history had formed around a single unifying goal, protecting the Ravenclaw homeworlds while learning from their combat experience. Emma, friend, Nova said, settling beside her on the rocky outcropping that overlooked the main settlement. Nova wants to show you something important. Emma followed Nova toward a section of the valley she hadn't seen before, where the natural rock formations created sheltered caves and hidden passages. As they walked, other Ravenclaw began appearing from the landscape, full adults with scales that gleamed like armor and eyes that held the wisdom of survivors. Nova's family, Nova announced proudly, as they approached a large female whose silver scales were marked with intricate golden patterns. This is Vera, Nova's birth mother. She leads the Northern Territories. Emma's breath caught. Throughout their months together, Nova had spoken of its lost family in past tense. She had assumed that all of Nova's relatives had died fighting the Void Collective. Vera approached with fluid grace, her massive form somehow conveying gentleness, despite obvious power. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made Nova's translator sound mechanical by comparison. Emma of the humans, Vera said, the words flowing like music through the translation device. Nova has spoken of you in the old songs, the deep memory songs that our people use to preserve important truths. You are sung as the bridge builder, the one who saw person instead of monster. Emma felt tears forming in her eyes. I thought Nova was alone. The report said all the adult Ravenclaw in this region had been killed. Many were, Vera replied, her scales shifting to patterns of grief and remembrance. But some of us survived in the deep places, protecting the younglings and maintaining the sacred sites. When Nova disappeared, we feared the worst. When Nova returned with stories of friendship among the Star People, we dared to hope. Nova moved between Emma and Vera, its scales bright with happiness. Vera, mother hid in the deep caves with 60 other adults and over 200 younglings. They have been fighting Void Eaters while staying hidden from galaxy ships. More adult Ravenclaw emerged from concealment, and Emma realized she was witnessing something extraordinary. These weren't the savage predators described in military reports. They were a sophisticated people with complex social structures, artistic traditions, and deep emotional bonds. Nova Child has learned much in the star places, Vera continued, studying Emma with intelligent eyes. Nova has learned to trust, to hope, to see beyond the boundaries of species. This is wisdom that our people had forgotten in our desperation to survive. Your people never forgot, Emma replied. Nova carried that wisdom with it from the very beginning. It just needed someone to recognize it. A younger adult Ravenclaw approached the group, its scales displaying urgent red patterns. Vera leader, the Far Watchers report new ships approaching the system boundary. Unknown configuration but moving with alliance formation patterns. Nova's scales immediately shifted to alert oranges. Emma friend, Nova feels vibrations from many ships. Big ships but not Void Eater ships. Emma activated her communication device, connecting to the orbital command station. This is Dr. Walsh. We're receiving reports of new ship movements. Can you provide identification? Commander Blake's voice came through the speaker, and Emma was surprised to hear excitement in his usually controlled tone. Dr. Walsh, we have confirmation on the new arrivals. It's the Corvani Deep Fleet. They've come to join the Alliance. Emma looked at Nova in amazement. The Corvani were legendary warriors, an ancient species that had withdrawn from galactic politics centuries ago. If they were emerging from isolation to join the fight against the Void Collective, it meant the Alliance had grown far beyond anyone's expectations. How many species are we up to now? Emma asked. 47 confirmed Alliance members as of this morning, Blake replied. Word about the human Ravenclaw cooperation has spread throughout the galaxy. Species that haven't spoken to each other in generations are putting aside old conflicts to face the collective threat. Nova's scales exploded into brilliant patterns of gold and silver. Nova idea worked! Nova thought that if one species could learn to trust Ravenclaw, other species might learn too. Now all people fight hungry dark together. Vera approached Emma, her massive form radiating approval. Emma of the humans, Nova Child speaks truth. Your species has given the galaxy something it has long needed, hope that understanding is possible between different peoples. It wasn't just humans, Emma replied, watching as more Ravenclaw emerged from the caves to greet the news of the expanding alliance. Nova taught us as much as we taught Nova, maybe more. A soft chime from Emma's communicator indicated an incoming priority message. She activated the device to find Captain Torres's image appearing in holographic form. Dr. Walsh, Nova, Torres, began, his Centaurian features showing obvious satisfaction. I have news from Galactic Command. The Alliance Council has voted unanimously to establish the first interspecies cultural exchange program, with you and Nova as the founding directors. Nova's translator made sounds that Emma had learned indicated pure joy. Nova and Emma friend will teach other people how to be friends across species barriers? That's exactly right, Torres confirmed. Ships from every Alliance member species will be arriving over the next few months, carrying young beings who want to learn what you two have accomplished. Emma looked around at the thriving settlement, at the adult Ravenclaw who had emerged. From hiding at Nova, whose scales were cycling through colors of pure happiness. When she had first met the frightened young creature in its cage, she had never imagined that their friendship would reshape the galaxy's understanding of cooperation and trust. There's one more thing, Torres continued. The Alliance Council has also voted to designate this world as the first protected interspecies sanctuary. No military vessels will be allowed in this system except by unanimous consent of all resident species. Vera's scales shifted to patterns Emma didn't recognize, but Nova quickly translated. Vera Mother says this is the greatest gift the Star People could offer. A place where all beings can live safely together. As the sun set over Nova's homeworld, painting the sky in colors that reflected off Ravenclaw scales and alien ships alike, Emma sat on the rocky outcropping where her journey with Nova had begun. The young Ravenclaw curled up beside her just as it had in the laboratory months ago, but now they were surrounded by friends and family from across the galaxy. "Nova, friend," Nova said softly, its voice carrying the wisdom it had gained from bridging two worlds. Nova has learned something important from Emma people and all Alliance people. What's that? Nova's scales shifted to the deep, peaceful blues that Emma had learned meant contentment. Nova learned that family is not just the people you are born with. Family is the people who choose to love you and protect you and help you grow. Emma ran her hand along Nova's back, feeling the warm life beneath the metallic scales. And sometimes, family comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes family starts with a frightened child who just needs someone to be kind, Nova agreed, nestling closer. And sometimes that kindness changes everything. Above them, ships from 47 different worlds moved in coordinated patterns around the planet's sky, not as conquerors or invaders, but as guardians of something precious. Proof that understanding and trust could grow between any peoples, willing to look beyond their fears and see the person within the alien form. The Void Collective still threatened the galaxy's outer rim, but they no longer faced a divided and suspicious collection of isolated species. They faced an alliance united by a simple truth that a human scientist and a young Ravenclaw had discovered. Together in a cold metal cage, that family, friendship, and hope were forces strong enough to bridge any gap between worlds.